I haven't talked to this next guest in a while, and that's probably my fault more than his. State Representative of the 55th District. His name is Steve Weir, joining us. Steve, good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on. Good morning.
I appreciate you. Now, you last year were named the ranking member of the Labor Committee. And let me ask you, in a general sense, can you explain to the audience what it is that the Labor Committee actually does?
So the Labor and Public Employees Committee, we deal basically with all matters relating to anything labor, workers' compensation, unemployment compensation, things around wages, things that involve labor and
Gotcha.
And hiring practices, that sort of thing. So as a small business owner myself, this was important for me and interesting to me to be on this committee,
Right.
just to see how many of the laws that come down and affect, business owners and business in general, a lot of them come out of this committee.
So before we get to some of the bad bills, I know you want to talk about that have resurfaced. When you're out amongst constituents talking about some of the things, what is it that they come and ask you about? Is it minimum wage? Is it, this public, not the public benefit, but the,
Paid family leave.
Paid family leave. Yeah, paid family leave. Thank you. Is that what bothers people more than anything else? What is it?
I honestly, I don't think many of our constituents, and this is just a broad statement that I'm making, many people have no clue what's going on up inside this building. It's a strange place, and a lot of laws and regulations come out of here that people have no clue are in the works. I would say, what do I hear? And quite frankly, the press doesn't report on some of these more mundane topics. So what have I heard over the past year? Certainly it's been a lot about energy costs, which, there are many reasons behind why we're the second highest state for electricity in the continental United States. But that and just I think the other overarching thing that I hear from my constituents is an inability, if they've got an issue, to try to get a resolution by calling a department, whether it's Department of Labor or Veterans or DMV, trying to get a hold of somebody to solve their problems. So they end up coming to their state rep because, we're able to resolve those things. But those are probably the two biggest complaints I get are just poor service and expensive electricity.
Gotcha. Yeah. Electricity is killing everybody, man. Something's got to be done about that. And I know you guys are actually in session till when? May?
Till June.
Oh, June.
Early
Okay.
June.
All right. Early June.
8th.
All right. So you got a lot of, this is it. This is the big sort of the heavy lift for sure for you, whether it's the budget or anything else that's going on. So you're in the middle of the fight right now, and that's why I appreciate you coming on. So let's talk about some of these bad bills. One in particular, I'll throw it out there and you can take it wherever you want. Allows striking employees to access unemployment benefits after a period of 2 consecutive weeks of striking, right?
Yeah. This was a proposal, and again, I'm new to, this is I'm just coming into my third year, so I'm finishing my first 2-year term, and this one came up last year, and honestly, when I talked to people about this, people thought I was joking, or I was being hyperbolic or partisan, and I said, no, this is a real proposal by legislative Democrats. And, obviously striking workers, this is really a nod to the unions. And, in order to be on strike, you have to be part of a union. And really, I'm not pro-labor, anti-labor. I am pro being neutral, that the legislative body has no business interfering in a private contract between two parties. And so you've got, you have management and you have labor. And the labor they're represented by unions, and so in my opinion, this is a matter that should be handled between the union and management and negotiated. And in this case, the unions are coming to us lobbying to have the legislature allow for unemployment compensation to be used to basically force the hand and force management to come back to the table with basically force them to concede in a strike. And I'm saying Republican colleagues and I have said that, this is really, we should not be tipping the scales in favor of one party or the other. Unemployment compensation is there expressly for people who have lost their job or who are unemployed at no fault of their own. They got laid off, they got, maybe they were let go, whatever, out of their control. In this case, a strike is even though it's kind of the nuclear option, both parties suffer in a strike. It's willful. It is deliberate on the part of labor to decide to go on strike, which
Right.
is not out of their control. So, really, this is I think this is a terrible proposal. It sets a terrible message, sends a terrible message to the businesses of Connecticut, to anybody looking to do business here. We're at the bottom of any category you want to measure economic performance. We're at the bottom of the list or near the bottom. This is further sending that message that we don't want to be serious about being competitive.
Well, it gives a serious advantage to the unions. I mean, they could strike and still get paid, right?
Yeah, yep. And I recognize that, it's not I'm sure nobody, when the decision to go on strike is made, I recognize that that's not a decision that's taken lightly.
Right.
That they've reached an impasse in the negotiations. But in this case, it does tip the scales in the favor of labor, where they're able to get compensation. And quite frankly, we all pay into unemployment, or most of us pay into unemployment compensation, and it's there as a result in an emergency, out of no fault of your own. In this case,
Right.
Organized labor, this is a decision they've made actively to go on strike. So we'll see where it goes. I can tell you it'll be a topic of much discussion. We'll be spending much time. If the language is similar to last year, we will be talking about this, and I hope that people, these are the sort of things that people just, the news doesn't report on it. Generally speaking,
Right.
People have no clue that this sort of stuff is going on.
We have state. No, I think that's great that you're spelling this out for folks and giving them a chance to digest it a little bit. Stephen Weir, state representative, is our guest, and we'll take, if you guys want to call and ask a question, feel free, and I'll put you in the queue. If we can get to you before we run out of time, we will. But bad bill number 2 is eliminating the tipped minimum wage, meaning you essentially just want to put restaurants out of business, right?
Yeah. So far, I'll say we spoke about this quite a bit, and this was a bill from last year. I should have probably made that more clear. That this bill, we haven't seen it come up with a proposal. But yes, this would eliminate the tipped minimum wage. So basically, servers are paid $6.39 an hour, and bartenders are, I think, around closer to $8 an hour minimum wage. But they also rely on tips. And if in a work day they didn't earn the minimum wage, then the employer has to make up the difference to make sure that worker is guaranteed the minimum wage. Much of the testimony we heard was servers are making, good servers, experienced servers are making upwards of $30 an hour, and bartenders north of $40 an hour. And the testimony we heard was, please don't change this,
right?
Because we like earning that money for performance. So this issue seems to have lost steam nationally. Because it's not working in places like Washington, D.C., businesses are closing. So we haven't seen this proposal come around this year, but we want folks to be aware that these types of proposals exist, and they're being really brought forward by organizations from outside of Connecticut. These paid, these are movement, organizations with big funding behind them, trying to bring these initiatives across state lines and really force these types of issues in states that, very few of the people testifying in favor of this last year were from Connecticut. Let's just put it that way.
Gotcha. State Representative Steve Weir is with us. And moving from that to SB 414, which, I can't believe that they would try to jam this through. But, you are so outnumbered and outgunned in both the House and the Senate, who knows, in Connecticut. But it would create an additional layer of bureaucracy and cost taxpayers by directing all state offices to hire diversity, equity, and inclusion directors. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, this was a proposal, again, that came through last year. Haven't seen it this year, but I think, and I'm not sure that we will, because the governor took it upon himself to basically act unilaterally, and he's created a department of, or a commission of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we now have a chief diversity officer. And I don't know all the details of what that includes, but what I can tell you is that while many of the major manufacturers, you hear John Deere, Harley Davidson, Tractor Supply, all these Microsoft, tons of companies are realizing this doesn't work, by choosing somebody based on their gender or their skin color. It just doesn't work. The best way to reward, the best way to find the best people is on performance, regardless of color, race, gender, and so companies private sector has figured that out. Many states have figured that out, but Connecticut, we're late to the party as usual, and so we're going down that DEI hiring. So I don't know all the details. A lot of that stuff isn't always forthright. But Governor Lamont bypassed the legislative process by creating his own department. So we'll see where that goes. But that came to light over the summer, where he created this department.
I appreciate that info on that one. So where this part of the state here, Eastern Connecticut, everywhere you drive or go, Stephen, there seems to be housing going up everywhere, right? And Waterford has a bunch of new housing, and New London, same idea, hundreds and hundreds of apartments and/or business. Complexes, condos being thrown up all over the place, and they're still telling me that there's a housing shortage. Where are all these people going to come from to fill this stuff?
Yeah, so Lee, you bring up a good point, and so the housing committee, by the way, has yet to meet. So we're two almost 3 weeks into the session, and we've not had a substantive meeting. So I'm hoping that we will get down to the discussing these issues. But these are questions that go through my head, and as I've been part of the housing committee for the past couple of years. Connecticut's population, I did the 90s, it's been roughly increase of about 10,000 people per year. So basically, over the course of 30 years, our population's gone up 300,000. We've not had these major spikes. I don't recall hearing about a housing crisis until around COVID. I know we had people coming here from New York to kind of flee worse conditions to come to slightly better conditions, if you will, taxation and such. We also had quite a bit of out-migration, people going to the southern states. So our population hasn't changed incredibly, and so I'm not sure. I'm asking this of my Democrat colleagues to please explain to me, why do we have houses are being built, to your point. Why do we all of a sudden have a housing crisis? And so far, that explanation has not been brought to me.
Okay.
I looked at. We have an illegal population. We have a housing shortage of roughly 100,000 units or so that's claimed.
Right.
We have people who are here illegally, around 80 to 100,000 people. But that number's been steady. So it's not like we've had a spike in people who are here illegally. That number's been steady since the early 2000s. So right. I just bring that up because that was one of the questions that went through my head is, if we've got a housing shortage of 100,000, we've got an illegal population of 100,000, is that the answer? Yeah. And I don't think that tells the whole story, because that population has been consistent for the past close to 20 years. So I think we need to flesh that out as to why are we short on housing. Because houses are being built, to your point. There's tons of apartments going up.
It seems that way. Yeah, it definitely seems that way. All right, one more before I'm going to run out of time, but it's really been great talking to you so far. But in and around housing as well, there seems to be like almost a pushback or backlash against the some of these landlords, right? So you got landlords in situations where they can't evict their tenants who are terrible tenants, don't pay, and they trash the place. And are you guys trying to fix that? Well, I mean, the law currently does allow for for a landlord to evict under certain circumstances, and in some cases evict with no reason, right? So if the lease runs out, let's just say the lease runs out at the end of this month, the landlord can say the lease is up. Yep. I'm not renewing it, and maybe the landlord wants to renovate the place, which is what happens with a lot of places. We're going to take it off the market. We're going to spend the next 6 months. It's his house. Yeah, exactly. It's his or her house. And so there are proponents who are advocating here for taking that right away, that the landlord must give a reason. And I've done a lot of work for housing providers, landlords over the years in my former business,
And the bottom line is, landlords are in the business of housing people, not evicting people. If they made if they evicted people, they want to keep people. So we acknowledge that there are some less than scrupulous landlords out there, and the regulations should bear the full brunt on those people who the slumlords, if you will,
Sure.
who have mold or rats, or who don't keep up with their properties, and their tenants are suffering. We recognize that, but those are outliers.
Right.
In this case, this is an opportunity or an attempt to have the state basically remove property rights from landlords.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, what separates America from many other countries in the world is that we have private property. The king doesn't own the property that we're on; the individuals do, and so we're very, very concerned about any chipping away at property rights, because that could, next thing could be private home ownership. So we're keeping a close eye on that, but there is a movement and a pressure and a lot of talking points around making out landlords to be the bad guys, when in fact, these are small business owners just like the rest of us. People make their living in housing people, and so we don't want to send a message that we're not open to housing, because the people who provide the housing will just take their business to other states, and we'll be full of unscrupulous landlords who don't keep up with the properties and that sort of thing. So that's very important to me to make sure we're not sending the wrong message.
Right.
We want to encourage investment here.